Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Israeli occupation's warplanes continued its round-the-clock airstrike and mock raids in Gaza Strip, as well as escalating its aggression on the West Bank, wrapping up more citizens and closing many charity institutions. More in the following report.
Israeli occupation airstrikes continued on Gaza Strip as the F-16 jet fighters launched raids at several locations and offices belonging to all Palestinian factions. First and foremost, the Fatah movement, despite the fact that all Palestinian factions announced commitment to the ceasefire. The Israeli occupation forces jet fighters launched at pre-dawn 3 strikes on some targets in Gaza Strip and synchronized with fierce artillery shells to parts of north and south of Gaza Strip, plunging most of the strip in darkness. The Israeli occupation forces aircraft fired after midnight at least one missile at the building of Abd al-Mu'ti al-Sabawi Charitable Society belonging to the Liberation Movement of Fatah in Al-Tufah neighborhood east of Gaza City, inflicting several damage and disconnecting of power. No injuries were reported. The other raids targeted a residential apartment building belonging to Shakar family in Al-Buraj refugee camp at the heart of Gaza Strip, wreaking havoc to it. No injuries were reported. In the third airstrike, a missile hit the office of the Colonel Sami Abu Samhadana, set next to the headquarters of Council of Ministers in Tal al-Hawa area, South Gaza City. The second missile hit a pylon in the area, cutting off the power completely. Meanwhile, the Interior Ministry asked the residents to stay away of the areas being hit by the Israeli missiles to let the civil defense crew and ambulances to be on duty as quickly as possible. The Interior Ministry statement said that some of the missiles and makeshift mortars triggered by the Israeli jet fires remained unexploded, appealing to the resident not to gather to evade life-threatening. To this point, the Israeli occupation forces F-16 airplanes has intensively launched false raids causing sonic bombs, which have negative and psychological effects of the citizens, traumatizing the students while attending their classes at schools. Particularly, false raids mostly often happened at night and while the children were going or leaving their schools, not to mention the material damages as the windows of the houses and stores were shattered to pieces. The Israeli occupation forces airstrikes came after an hour of the Palestinian faction's declaration to stop all attacks against Israel from Gaza Strip, in addition to the renewable commitment to the de facto ceasefire.
أهلا بكم من جديد.
Israeli military planes struck an inhabited area in northern Gaza hours after the Israeli Defense Minister Silvan Shalom warned that Israel will continue its policy of targeted killings against Palestinian activists from Hamas and the Islamic Jihad movement. The Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Qurayh demanded the international community and the United States to pressure Israel to stop what he called the Israeli barbaric aggression on Gaza. Meanwhile, Ibrahim Abu Najah, the head of the High Observation Committee of the National and Islamic Palestinian factions, told Agence France Presse that all factions agreed to stop armed attacks against Israel from the Gaza Strip. Israel has hit the infrastructure of the Hamas movement just before the Palestinian parliamentary elections in order to escalate the situation in Gaza and create new rules for dealing with the new reality in Gaza after withdrawing from it. Sharon, who is accused by his own party of handing Gaza to Hamas, took advantage of the opportunity that was created when Hamas launched missiles towards settlements surrounding Gaza to show that his iron fist can still reach Gaza through air raids and targeted killings. His other objective is to foil Hamas's goal to participate in the parliamentary elections of January 2006, evidenced by his mass arrests of hundreds of Hamas members in the West Bank.
Israel is trying to prevent Hamas from joining the Palestinian political process and participating in the parliamentary elections. I believe that Hamas is very interested in joining the Palestinian government by competing in the elections.
Hamas understands Israel's motives, which aim to prevent it from gaining international legitimacy by participating and winning significant numbers of seats in the Palestinian parliament, which explains why Hamas announced halting its attacks against Israel. Israel ignored the announcement and continued its policy of targeted killing against Hamas's activists and arrested many of its members.
The Israeli escalation aims at hijacking the big victory of the Palestinian people in Gaza and shedding Palestinian blood for achieving political gains in the Israeli elections. Therefore, Hamas decided to preempt these objectives and protect the Palestinian people.
Regardless of the objectives that made Hamas announce a ceasefire, the Palestinian Authority, which has been trying to find ways to calm the situation so that Israel would not have justification to continue its aggression, welcomed the decision. The Palestinian Authority also wants to avoid having to disarm the Palestinian resistance factions.
We welcome this decision because this reflects that we have reached a common position about the nature of risks that we are facing and the ambitions that we all plan on fulfilling.
The internal challenges and international obligations that the Palestinian Authority is facing leads one to believe that the solution is not going to come soon. No one can tell what will happen in the future because the Israeli policy continues to confuse the situation. The Israeli assassination and air raids in Gaza and the mass arrests in the West Bank are carried out simultaneously within the framework of an Israeli plan. It seems that the Israeli officials want to make the Palestinians pay with their blood so they can achieve political gains in the Israeli elections.
The chief of IDF operations, Major General Israel Ziv, delivered a stiff warning to the Palestinians today. Briefing reporters, Ziv threatened that if the Qassam rocket fire from the Gaza town of Beit Hanun continues, Israel's retaliatory artillery fire will turn that area into a demilitarized zone. He added that he would not rule out using cannon fire against homes in the town after residents are warned to leave. Major General Ziv said the IDF will continue its Gaza operation, named First Rain, which is aimed at showing Palestinians that the rules of the game have changed and Israel will not allow any more terror attacks from the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian people and the PA must decide, said Ziv, whether they are masters of their fate or prisoners in the hands of Hamas and its like. On the other hand, the chief of operations revealed that the Egyptians recently prevented 3 separate attempts to smuggle weapons into Gaza and said there is marked improvement in security along the Philadelphia route. In political developments, Monday's surprise victory for Prime Minister Ariel Sharon in the Likud Central Committee has led to a dramatic turnaround in Sharon's popularity among Likud voters. According to 2 polls published today in Haaretz and Maariv newspapers, Sharon is now leading Netanyahu by upward of 14%. Just 1 month ago, polls showed that Netanyahu would have won the Likud primaries by a landslide with 47% of the vote compared to just 30% for Sharon. The latest polls increase the chances that Sharon will compete against Netanyahu in Likud primaries rather than splitting the party and heading an independent list.
A vehicle belonging to the Jordanian embassy in Baghdad came under fire in Baghdad by terrorists this morning, but there were no casualties. An official statement said an embassy employee, along with an Iraqi policeman and the driver, were in the car when it was hit by 3 bullets. It said that an Iraqi civilian car, which was parked behind the embassy's vehicle, came under fire and that its driver, along with an Iraqi policeman, were killed in the incident. Meanwhile, violence continued in Iraq with a series of fatal attacks across the country. A female suicide bomber blew herself up outside a U.S. military office in the northern Iraqi town of Tal Afar, killing herself and at least 7 other people and wounding some 53. Police said many people were waiting to join the army at the recruitment site housed in a former U.S. military base, which had just opened today. The U.S. military said in a statement that the bomb targeted Iraqi citizens filing for compensation at the Civil Military Operations Center. In further violence, 1 policeman was killed by gunmen in northeastern Baghdad when he was heading to work. A roadside bomb in the outskirts of central Baghdad also killed 1 and wounded another. In the town of Taji, north of Baghdad, police said they have found 7 bodies which were handcuffed, blindfolded and shot. Police said a group of men in commando uniforms had detained 6 people yesterday in the Hurriya district of Baghdad. They were found in a morgue shot dead. Earlier, Iraqi police said they found 22 bodies of shooting victims near the town of Kut, southeast of Baghdad. U.S. President George W. Bush said there will be an increase in violence in Iraq before next month's elections. Bush's comments came a day after Iraqi and U.S. forces announced they had killed Abdullah Abu Azzam, the #2 al-Qaeda leader in Iraq. Bush spoke following a meeting with General George Casey, the top commander in Iraq, and General John Abi Zaid, the commander of the U.S. Central Command. Insurgent attacks have escalated ahead of an October 15 referendum on a new constitution that has raised fears of a bloody sectarian split.
2 key elections are fast approaching. As these milestones approach, we can expect there to be increasing violence from the terrorists. They can't stand elections. The thought of people voting is an anathema to them. You see, democracy and freedom are the exact opposite of what's in their mind and their vision.
A spokesman for the Iraqi Prime Minister confirmed that the Iraqi security forces in the next few days will crack down swiftly on insurgents who are targeting Iraqi civilians. In a press conference in Baghdad, he confirmed that a number of insurgents of Al-Qaeda terrorist organization were killed. Among the dead was Abu Azzam, Al-Qaeda's #2 man in Iraq.
ضربة أخرى تلقاها تنظيم القاعدة في العراق. هذا ما أعلنه المتحدث باسم رئيس الوزراء.
According to Dr. Laith Kuba, the Iraqi Prime Minister spokesman, the Al-Qaeda organization in Iraq suffered another setback as their #2 man, Abdullah Najm Abu Azzam, was killed. The Iraqi and the multinational forces launched a joint offensive operation this week in Baghdad, killing Abu Azzam.
الشخص الأول المسؤول عن شبكة التنظيم في منطقة كرابلة في عمليات عسكرية جرت هناك.
أبو عزام بالتحديد هو المسؤول عن تبني وتنفيذ سياسة الهجمات العشوائية اللي اعترت بغداد.
Abu Azzam is definitely the mastermind of many of the random terror attacks in Baghdad, especially those operations that target the Shiites. He was running and overseeing Al-Qaeda daily operations and activities in Baghdad. He was specifically in charge of the organization's general fund and its communication with the outside world. Moreover, he was responsible for planning many of the booby trap operations, hundreds of Iraqi civilians.
عن التخطيط وإصدار الأوامر بالسيارات المفخخة اللي قتلت المئات من العراقيين الأبرياء.
وعلى ضوء ذلك توقع المتحدث.
The spokesman expects a strong backlash from the insurgents. He called on all Iraqis to stand united in order to defeat those criminals.
وإطفاء نيران فتنتهم.
نحن نتوقع ردود فعل عشوائية وعنيفة منهم هدفها طبعا مرة أخرى تغطية.
We expect the terrorists to react strongly in order to cover up their defeat. They will try to spread fear among people and attempt to stir trouble between the many different Iraqi groups. I would like to take this opportunity to call on all Iraqis to be vigilant and to be aware of what goes on around them.
وراء استقطابات ونعرات، لهذا هذه فرصة طبعا لدعوة كل المواطنين إلى التمتع بالوعي والحذر.
As far as the town of Tel Afar is concerned, Dr. Kuba confirmed that the Iraqi Prime Minister Ibrahim al-Jafari sent an envoy to assess the damage there and to help and compensate the refugees. Nibraq al-Rubai'a, Iraqiya, Baghdad.
من جهته أكد الدكتور موفق الربيعي مستشار الأمن القومي عن مقتل المسؤول الثاني
Dr. Muwaffaq al-Rubai'i, the Iraqi National Security Advisor, confirmed that the number 2 terrorist man of Al-Qaeda organization in Iraq was killed in a joint Iraqi and multinational military operation in Baghdad. That was triggered by a tip from an Iraqi citizen. He was considered to be one of the most dangerous terrorists who planned and directed many terrorist attacks, including car explosions, suicide operations and abductions.
عمليات خطف وذبح للأبرياء.
السلطات الأمريكية تعتقل مئات المتظاهرين ضد الحرب على العراق أمام البيت الأبيض.
American police in Washington, D.C. arrested hundreds of anti-war demonstrators in front of the White House. Among the detainees was Cindy Sheehan, the mother of a soldier killed in Iraq. She is leading an anti-war campaign in the United States.
أوقفوا الحرب الآن.
Demonstrators chanted, "Stop the war now," as they took to the streets to protest the war in Iraq. Hundreds of them were arrested by police as they sat down in front of the White House. Some protesters climbed up on fences to protest their anti-war banners. Among the detainees was Cindy Sheehan, the mother of an American soldier killed in Iraq. She organized an anti-war campaign in the U.S. Sheehan and her supporters did not care much about the police detention, which lasted several hours. She was smiling the entire time as police took her into custody. The crowd also cheered, applauded, and chanted slogans such as, "The entire world is watching us," as Sheehan was escorted by police. The demonstrators were released pending their appearance in court. Their charges ranged from protesting without a permit to engaging in civil disobedience and disturbing the peace. The U.S. administration's reaction was quick. Scott McClelland, the State Department spokesman, downplayed the effect of the demonstration on Bush's decision of continuing the war in Iraq. McClelland confirmed that the American president disagreed with anti-war demonstrators who are calling for a U.S. withdrawal from Iraq, charging that such a move will weaken the security of the U.S. and jeopardize its interests. In the wake of Sheehan's anti-war campaign, a massive demonstration including more than 100,000 people was held in Washington, D.C. More demonstrations were also held in other parts of the world. In the wake of Sheehan's anti-war campaign, a massive demonstration including more than 100,000 people was held in Washington, D.C. More demonstrations were also held in other parts of the world. Protesters called on the immediate withdrawal of U.S. troops from Iraq and to promptly end the war there.
A spokesman closely associated with the supreme leader of the Shiite religion authority confirmed that the great Ayatollah Ali Sistani will issue a religious decree or fatwa calling on people to approve the Iraqi draft constitution in the public poll on October 15. The fatwa comes in the wake of the Iraqi Islamic Party's rejection of the draft constitution. They condemned the way it deals with issues concerning the Arab Sunnis in Iraq.
أسابيع قليلة تفصل العراقيين عن موعد الاستفتاء على الدستور الدائم والذي سيصوت عليه الشعب في 15 من تشرين.
There are only a few weeks left until the Iraqis go to the polls to vote on their final draft constitution. It will take place on October 15th. Political and religious leaders called on all Iraqis to cast their votes on the draft constitution. However, people differ on whether they are going to vote yes or no. A close source to the higher religious institution confirmed that the great Ayatollah al-Sistani will issue a religious decree calling for the approval of the draft constitution. In a press conference in the city of Al-Najaf, Ayatollah Al-Fayed, a religious leader of the Islamic Higher Council, also called on people to vote yes on the draft constitution because it protects the rights of all Iraqi people. However, the Iraqi Islamic Party completely rejected the draft constitution because it adopts the principle of a federation, which will divide the country into separate provinces. As the voting on the draft constitution nears, Iraqi and American officials expect an escalation of violence in many Iraqi towns and cities in order to derail the path to peace there. The October 15th referendum will decide on whether or not the Iraqi people will approve the draft constitution. Iraqi officials are hoping for an approval, claiming that it will contribute to the de-escalation of violence that has been plaguing Iraq for a long time.
التي وضع عليها البعض وخصوصا المسؤولين في الحكومة العراقية رهانا في أن تساهم في الحد من تصاعد عمليات العنف المتفشي في العراق.
Several MTC Touch employees were detained for questioning in Beirut yesterday in connection with the probe into former Premier Rafiq Hariri's murder. The exact number of detainees was not clear. Some media reports put the number at 9 and said 6 were released several hours later but were called back for questioning this morning. The 3 others remained in the custody of the internal security forces. Lebanese officials from the ISF met today with administration of other mobile company Alpha. Witnesses said they saw men and women employees of MTC Touch being taken away by security forces from the offices of telecom firm MTC at Beirut port. The number of detainees was not clear. According to some media sources, 9 people were taken in for questioning. 6 of them were released the same day but were called back for questioning this morning, while the 3 others remained in the ISF custody. Some Lebanese newspapers put the number to 8, others to 9 or 11. The Daily Al-Nahar said 19 employees of the mobile company were taken in by the ISF. According to a statement from the Internal Security Force, the officers were raided on the orders of Lebanon's Attorney General Said Mirza. On September 20th, 4 men who sold mobile phone lines that were only used around the time of Rafiq Hariri's assassination on February 14th were arrested. The men were on a list of 10 mobile subscription salesmen handed over to Mirza by the UN Commission of Inquiry into Hariri's killing in a massive bomb blast. A judicial source said Mirza issued arrest warrants against the 4 on charges of withholding information about the crime. According to security sources, charges will be pressed against 3 of those detained yesterday for hiding and deleting information from the company's database linked to 8 mobile lines suspected of being used during the assassination. The 3 are said to be technical experts from ITS, MTC's technical support unit. A UN official in Beirut said the international investigators probing Hariri's murder were not involved in the raid, but said the mission's chief, Lev Melis, was informed about the move and believed it would benefit his inquiries. Sources from MTC said that the ISF confiscated some data from the company. The UN Commission had said thousands of phone calls were made before, during and after Hariri's assassination. Sources said they were sent to be processed in French and German high-tech laboratories. Iran's parliament took the first step for passing a motion of single urgency in Wednesday's open session, which mandates the government to suspend implementation of the additional protocol to the NPT until Iran's right to possess nuclear fuel cycle is officially recognized. The decision was taken in reaction to the recent resolution of the IAEA's Board of Governors. Meanwhile, Parliament Speaker Ghulam Ali Haddad Adel told the session Iranian parliament considers not wise further implementation of the NPT's additional protocol since, as he added, certain countries are taking advantage of Iran's good intentions in taking the voluntary measure intended for beefing up international confidence over its peaceful nuclear plan. Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, termed as important the issue of holding healthy elections in Iraq.
At a joint press conference with the visiting UN Special Envoy to Iraq, Ashraf Jahangir Ghazi, in Tehran on Wednesday, Larijani said Iran and UN favor establishment of a secure atmosphere in Iraq, paving the way for the formation of a democratic government. The UN envoy in turn highlighted the role of Iraqi neighboring countries to help improve conditions in Iraq.
مدار الليلة نختمه برائحة الطيب مع عطر العود.
We conclude our program tonight with the smell of Arabic incense and perfumes. This unique incense originated in the Arab Gulf, and it is very scarce. It is feared that it will soon become extinct due to the over-excessive cultivation of this resource. Environmental organizations are calling for better handling and use of this product. In addition, the plant from which this product is extracted must also be protected.
العود سيد العطور الشرقية بل ملكها.
The Arabic incense of the Gulf region is the king of Oriental perfumes. Its smell carries with it part of the Arabic culture in general and the Gulf culture in particular. It is highly expensive and rare, and its demand is very high in the Gulf region because Arabs care about the passionate smell of their bodies. It goes back a long time in history, which makes it very popular. It is used in many occasions, such as social gatherings, religious sermons, or meetings with loved ones. The women of the Arab Gulf put this rare perfume on their bodies and clothes to smell good. However, Arab men use it to show their prestige. According to many environmental organizations, this cologne, which is extracted from the ocular agulocha tree, is facing extinction and is increasingly becoming an endangered species. The organizations are warning against the excessive use of this waxy and oily material, which is used to extract the incense. Moreover, the illegal cultivation of this product is posing a threat to these endangered species.
تفرزها الأشجار المنتجة للعود في الشرق الأقصى بالإضافة إلى الحصاد غير القانوني ما يؤدي إلى انخفاض حاد في الأشجار البرية.
The environmental organization Traffic cited that some work must be done to curb the excessive global use of agarwood trees and other similar endangered species. There is a decline in the quality and quantity of wild products that are cultivated in these forests.
التي تحصد من الحياة البرية.
على الرغم من التحذيرات فإن المنظمات البيئية لا تدعو إلى وقف تجارة.
The environmental organizations are calling on more organized and stricter trade of this product. Its trade goes back 2,000 years. The high price of the waxy and oily material used in extracting the perfume made it subject to illegal cultivation and trade in many Far East countries. 1 kilogram of pure oil that makes the perfume costs $5,000 to $10,000. The fair market value goes even higher if the oil is of higher quality. It is sold in different shapes and forms, including incense, wood slices, sprays, and sometimes as roots. Malaysia, Indonesia, and Cambodia are the main exporters of this product.
والشرائح والمسحوق والجذور في بعض الأحيان وتعد ماليزيا وإندونيسيا وكمبوديا من أهم البلاد المصدرة له.
I remember when I was in Singapore, we inquired about the price of some incense. However, traders started to come and go, acting discreet and being suspicious. We couldn't check the quality of the product because it was illegal.
The incense is smuggled to Malaysia and Singapore and sold illegally in black markets.
The incense and the perfume made out of this unique product was mentioned in many Arabic poems. If there's a national symbol for each culture, this incense will be the national symbol for the Arabian Peninsula.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.